All right, buckle up, everybody, because today we're going deep. You with me.
Always up for a deep dive. Let's do it.
So we're talking Baron Trump's marvelous underground journey. Heard of it?
Classic, right? Who doesn't love a good underground adventure?
Exactly. But we're not just talking plot points and hidden cities today. We're taking a totally different approach, looking at this story, get this, through the lens of the Quran.
Yeah, it's this fascinating analysis someone did, connecting Baron's actions to specific verses.
I know, right? Like at first I was like, wait, what? But it gets really interesting, like how they use it to highlight moral lessons.
It's not about saying the book itself is Islamic or anything. It's more like using a different tool to examine it, you know?
Yeah, like putting on a new set of glasses and suddenly seeing things you missed before.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So right off the bat, Baron's kind of a jerk to, like, everyone. He's super arrogant, especially towards the Rattlebrains and the Micromen.
Total culture clash. He judges them hard, gives them these, like, awful nicknames, not hero material.
And this is where the analysis gets interesting. They connect this attitude to Surah Al-Hujurat, verses 11 to 13 in the Quran. Basically, it says that true superiority isn't about your group, it's about being righteous, you know?
Yeah, like actions speak louder than bloodlines or whatever.
Right. And the verse even calls out making fun of people with nicknames. It's wild how directly it relates to Baron's behavior.
It makes you think, though, right? How often do we do that? Maybe not so obviously, but like using words to make someone feel small.
It's a good point. And it all goes back to this idea that we should treat everyone with kindness and respect. The Quran really emphasizes that, like in Surah An-Nisa, verse 36.
And not just your friends, but everyone, even strangers.
Exactly. It's this reminder that we're all human, you know? And this is something Baron totally misses, like how he takes advantage of the Solonites. He uses their fear to get what he wants.
Total abuse of power. And sadly, something we see a lot in the real world, too. People using their position to exploit others.
And the Quran addresses that directly. In Surah An-Nisa, verse 58, it stresses justice, especially for those in authority. Being fair, keeping your word, judging rightly.
It's like just because you can do something doesn't mean you should, especially if it hurts others.
Right. And the Quran is pretty serious about this, even talking about consequences for those who oppress others in Surah Al-Shura, verses 42 and 43.
So there are real stakes involved, even in this fantastical story. Speaking of which, let's talk about Baron's impatience. He's always frustrated, especially with those rattlebrains, never trying to understand them.
He's like, "Ooh, you're weird, I'm out." Zero effort to connect.
It makes you wonder if he ever actually listens to anyone.
Well, the Quran offers a different perspective on that. Surah Al-Baqarah, verse 153, is all about patience, especially in tough situations.
It's like a key to navigating life, to understanding different points of view.
Right. And it ties into Surah Al-Asr, verses 2 and 3, which suggests that true success, true righteousness, comes from those who practice and encourage patience.
Which Baron definitely doesn't do. He wants everything N now W, and it always seems to backfire.
It's like the story itself is showing us the value of patience through his failures.
Pretty clever. And it connects to this bigger theme of respecting diversity. Remember how Baron acts towards the Micromen and the Selenites?
Oh, yeah. Total condescension. He looks down on them because they're different.
It goes against everything Surah Al-Hujurat says about diversity. Verse 13 is all about learning from each other, not judging based on appearances.
The Quran is clear. Real worth comes from your actions, not your looks or background.
It's a good reminder for all of us, right? How often do we judge too quickly?
All the time. And this appreciation for diversity is echoed beautifully in Surah Ar-Rum, verse 22. It points to the beauty of all the different languages, colors, cultures. Yeah. It's like a sign of God's greatness.
It's like saying, hey, difference isn't a threat. It's something to celebrate.
Exactly. It's a call to broaden our horizons, to see the richness that different perspectives bring, something Baron unfortunately struggles with.
Especially in how he treats those Selenites. It's like he sees their vulnerability and just uses it.
No empathy at all. It makes you think about how we treat those less fortunate, those who are vulnerable, in our own world.
It's a tough question to ask ourselves, right? Are we being compassionate or are we taking advantage?
It's crucial. And Surah Al-Baqarah, verse 177, defines true righteousness as showing kindness and generosity to those in need, especially the vulnerable, orphans, the poor, travelers.
It's a challenge for us all to live up to that definition.
Definitely. And Surah An-Nisa, verse 75, takes it even further. It's about standing up for the oppressed, being protectors, not oppressors, taking action, not just being passively good.
That's a powerful message.
It is. And it shows how even this, fantastical adventure story can offer real insights into how we should treat each other.
It's like beneath all the wild adventures, there's this core message of compassion and justice.
And while it's presented through an Islamic lens, those values resonate no matter your beliefs.
It's about recognizing our shared humanity.
Exactly. It provides a really unique way to look at those values and how they play out in our lives, both individually and as a society.
So even if you're not into religion, or maybe fantasy novels aren't your thing, there's something here for everyone.
Absolutely. It pushes us to think critically about the choices we make, the impact we have on others. Are we living ethically? Are we contributing to a more just and compassionate world? Those are questions worth asking, no matter who you are.
Big questions, for sure.
They are. But sometimes, even the most out-there stories can lead us to those important conversations.
That's the beauty of it, right? It's like you never know where you'll find wisdom.
Exactly. And this deep dive shows that sometimes it's hiding in the most unexpected places.
So true. Okay, we've talked a lot about Barron's less than stellar moments.
Yeah, he's made some questionable choices.
But were there any times where he actually did something, well, right, according to this Islamic analysis, I mean?
That's a great question. And yeah, there are definitely moments where Barron's actions align with the values the Quran promotes. For example, remember his encounter with the wind whisperer?
Oh, yeah. That's when he actually takes the time to learn from someone completely different from him. Like, embraces their unique perspective. We don't see that side of him very often.
It's true. And this actually ties into the Quran's emphasis on seeking knowledge and wisdom from all kinds of sources.
Yeah.
Like in Surah Al-Ankabut, verse 20, it encourages observation, exploration, learning from the world around us.
It's like Barron, in that moment, really embodies the spirit of that verse. He's open to new experiences, and it shapes his understanding.
Exactly. It highlights the importance of intellectual humility.
Yeah.
The willingness to learn from those with different experiences, different insights.
It's a good reminder for all of us, especially in today's world.
For sure. And it shows this analysis doesn't just paint Barron as purely good or bad. It recognizes that he's complex, like all of us.
It's like those classic morality plays where characters represent different virtues and vices. It's like Barron is this flawed protagonist who we can actually learn from.
I love that comparison. It highlights the educational aspect of this whole thing. It's not just about interpreting a story. It's about drawing out valuable lessons for our own lives.
Exactly. Okay, so let's say someone's listening to this and thinking, this is interesting, but I'm not Muslim. Does this really apply to me? What would you say?
Totally fair question. I think the key takeaway is that these ethical principles are universally relevant. Whether you call them Islamic teachings or just human values, the importance of respect, compassion, justice, understanding, it goes beyond any specific religion.
Right. It's about those shared values that connect us as human beings.
Exactly. This analysis, by using the Quran, simply provides a unique way to look at those values and what they mean in our lives.
So whether you're a religious scholar, a bookworm, or just someone who likes a good thought-provoking conversation, there's something here for everyone.
Totally agree. It encourages us to think critically about the stories we hear, the choices we make, the impact we have on others.
It's like saying, hey, even in this crazy adventure novel, there are real lessons about how we treat each other.
And those lessons, while presented through an Islamic lens, are relevant for all of us as we try to live more meaningful and ethical lives.
Couldn't have said it better myself. So, we've covered a lot today. We've seen how Barron Trump's marvelous underground journey can be analyzed through the Quran, bringing out lessons about prejudice, power, patience, compassion. We've seen how Barron himself is this mix of good and bad, and how his choices, whether they're right or wrong, can be opportunities for us to reflect on our own lives.
We've also talked about how these teachings, while rooted in Islam, hold universal relevance. They prompt us to examine our own values and actions in light of principles like respect, justice, and understanding.
It's been a wild ride. But there's one final point I find super intriguing, and I'd love to get your take on it before we wrap up. Remember how we talked about the Quran emphasizing caring for the vulnerable as part of true righteousness?
Yes, absolutely. It's a central theme in Islamic teachings.
Well, it got me thinking. Barron, in the story, he journeys to this fantastical underground world, right? He encounters all these strange creatures, these unique culture.
Right. He's exposed to a whole new reality, one that challenges his initial perceptions.
Exactly. And it made me wonder, what if that entire journey, that descent into this strange world, What if it's a metaphor for something deeper? What if it represents a journey of self-discovery, like a process of confronting our own biases and expanding our understanding of the world around us?
Whoa. That's a fascinating interpretation, and I think it fits perfectly with the message of this whole analysis.
Right. It's like Baron's literal underground journey becomes a symbol for this internal journey we all have to take to confront our prejudices, to cultivate compassion, to develop a more inclusive and ethical worldview.
It adds a whole new layer of depth to the story. It's like an invitation to consider how we can embark on our own metaphorical journeys of self-discovery and moral growth.
And that's a powerful message, no matter what you believe.
Absolutely. It reminds us that even in the most fantastical stories, there are real truths to be found if we're willing to look for them.
I love that. Well, I think that's a perfect place to stop for today.
I agree. We've covered so much ground.
But the conversation doesn't end here. Join us next time as we continue our exploration of Baron Trump's marvelous underground journey through the lens of the Quran.
We'll be diving even deeper into the themes of personal growth, ethical living, and the power of compassion to bridge divides and create a more just and understanding world.
It's going to be another wild ride. Until then, thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Keep those minds open and those questions coming.
We'll see you next time.
Do that?
So much to unpack, Ray. It's like this little adventure story has become this like moral playground.
Totally.
Yeah.
And it really makes you think about how we approach stories, like what we choose to focus on.
Exactly. Okay, but gotta be honest, Baron. He's not exactly like Mr. Perfect, you know? Makes a ton of mistakes.
Oh, for sure. It's impulsive, kind of selfish at times.
Yeah.
Not always the best example of, like, how to treat people.
Right. Which I guess is what makes it so interesting. It's not like we're holding him up as some kind of saint. The analysis actually uses those flaws, those moments where he messes up.
Yeah, like how he constantly puts down the Micromen and the Solonites just because they're different.
His prejudice is just like out there, especially at the start. It's like he can't see past their size, their customs.
And that's where Surah Al-Hujurat comes in again, that verse 13, reminding us that diversity is supposed to be something we learn from, not something that divides us.
It's like real beauty, real worth isn't about what you look like on the outside. It's about those inner qualities, kindness, compassion, righteousness, things that, let's be real, Baron sometimes struggles with.
Big time. And this is where that idea of an inner journey gets really interesting. Remember how we were talking about Baron literally going to this underground world?
Yeah, where he meets all those weird creatures, has all those crazy experiences, things that totally change his understanding of the world.
Right. What if we think of that journey as a metaphor? Like for the journey we all have to take inside ourselves to deal with our own biases, to broaden our understanding, to ultimately become better people, you know?
Oh, I like that. So it's like his physical adventure is also this reflection of our own internal struggles, like as we grow, as we learn.
Exactly. And it connects so well with how the Quran talks about self-reflection and
Mhm.
constantly trying to improve ourselves. Like there's this verse in Surah Al-Qiyamah, verses 14 and 15.
Mhm.
It's powerful. It basically says that we're our own judges in the end.
Deep. Like we can't hide from our own conscience or the consequences of our actions.
Right. It's about taking responsibility for what we do, making sure our choices match up with our values.
So even though Baron isn't always the best role model, his journey, both literally and like metaphorically, can teach us a lot about how messy personal growth can be.
For sure. And it reminds us that making mistakes is part of being human, but what matters is that we learn from them and try to do better.
Okay, but we've focused a lot on Baron's less than ideal qualities. Were there any times where he actually did something right, according to this Islamic analysis?
Definitely. Remember the Wind Whisperer. That encounter is a great example of Baron being open-minded, willing to learn from someone totally different from him.
Oh, yeah. He really listens to them, even changes his way of thinking because of it. It's a big moment for him.
And it ties in beautifully with how the Quran talks about getting knowledge and wisdom from lots of different places. Surah Al-Ankabut, verse 20, encourages us to travel through the land and observe how he began creation. Be curious, explore the world, learn from everyone.
And it's like Baron, in that moment, is living that VIFs. He's not just traveling physically, he's expanding his horizons mentally and emotionally, too.
Exactly. It shows the importance of humility, of being willing to learn from people who have different experiences and insights than us.
So this analysis isn't saying Baron is all good or all bad. It's recognizing that he's a mix, just like all of us.
Exactly. It's a nuanced approach that avoids those easy judgments and asks us to look at the complexities of human behavior.
Which I think makes it much more relatable. We all have strengths and weaknesses.
Totally. And this analysis reminds us that self-improvement is an ongoing thing. It's not about being perfect. It's about trying to be better each day.
And maybe that's the biggest lesson we can take away from Baron's crazy underground adventure. Even with all the weird creatures and moral dilemmas, there's always room for growth, for learning, for a deeper understanding of ourselves and the world.
Beautifully put. And I think that's a message that resonates with anyone, regardless of their beliefs.
It's really powerful how this, kids' book can spark such deep conversations.
Right. And I love how it connects to this idea of Baron's journey as a metaphor for our own growth.
Yeah.
Like, he's not just going underground physically. He's also exploring, the depths of his own character.
Totally. It makes you wonder, what underground journeys are we on in our own lives? What are those things that challenge us, that make us uncomfortable, that force us to look at our own biases?
Such a good question. And I think the Quran actually offers some really helpful insights here. There's this verse, Surah Al-An'am, verse 95. It talks about how Allah is the cleaver of the grain and the date seed. He brings the living out of the dead and brings the dead out of the living. It's this beautiful image of transformation.
Yeah, even from something that seems lifeless, new life can emerge.
Exactly. And it reminds us that we're all capable of change, of shedding those old patterns, those outdated beliefs, and embracing new ways of being.
So it's not just about admitting we have flaws. It's about actively trying to change, to become better people, more compassionate, more just, more understanding.
Absolutely. And the Quran makes it clear that this is a lifelong journey. Surah Al-Azr, verses 2 and 3, talk about how mankind is in loss, except for those who have believed and done righteous deeds and advised each other to truth and advised each other to patience.
It's like good intentions aren't enough. You got to put those beliefs into execution, walk the walk, right?
Exactly. And it highlights how important community is. We're not in this alone. We need to support each other, challenge each other, work together to make the world a better place.
It reminds me of those moments in the story where Baron really has to lean on his companions. He learns from them, grows because of their support.
That's such a good point. It shows how much we can achieve when we collaborate, when we recognize that we're stronger together.
It's pretty inspiring. Even in this fantastical story, there are these really powerful messages about personal growth, about living ethically, about the importance of community.
And it's amazing how this analysis ties it all back to this specific religious framework, showing how universal these values are.
It's a great reminder that we're all connected. So to everyone listening out there, what are your underground journeys? What are those challenges you're facing, those opportunities for growth that are right in front of you?
And how can you lean on your community, your loved ones, your fellow travelers on this journey of life to help you navigate those challenges, to become a more compassionate, just, and understanding person?
It's been a wild ride, exploring Baron Trump's marvelous underground journey through this whole new lens.
I know, right? Who knew a kid's book could spark such deep conversations about ethics, morality, and personal transformation?
Seriously. So to everyone listening, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep striving to make a positive difference in the world.
And remember, the journey is just as important as the destination. Embrace the challenges, the discoveries, and the transformative power of continuous learning and growth.
Beautifully said. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, everyone. Until next time, keep seeking knowledge, keep the conversations going, and keep those minds open. See you next time.